Hello, this is Ted Remus, your instructor for Microsoft Access. And today what we're going to do is build a simple table in Access. Tables are very important. They're the building blocks in Access. They're where you start in storing your data. And they're very similar to tables in Microsoft Excel. If you've used Excel, tables will look somewhat similar to that. But the beauty of Microsoft Access is that you can do a lot more powerful things once you put your data in the tables, and you'll see that as the course goes along. Tables are the basic building blocks. And what I'm going to do in this database is build the database. The purpose of my database is going to be to track my music compact disc collection. I have several CDs, and what I want to do in the database is track all that data and control it and be able to see it and perhaps do things like the total cost of my collection, the age of my collection, how many CDs I have by different artists, and all of that. Those are the kinds of things you can do in an Access database. But to get started in Access, what you need to do is build a table and collect your data. So that's what I'm going to do. We're on the screen in Microsoft Access. Once you create a database, there's nothing in this database right now. But what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show up here, we're going to create. So you go to the Create tab at the top, and I'm going to create a table. And what you'll see there, it's built a table, and it's actually put in a field right here at the beginning called ID. That is an automatic field, and we'll talk about that more in a later lesson. What you'd want to do is just leave that field for right now, and what we're going to do is add fields to track the data about my CDs. What I've decided to track for each CD, and you'll want to think about this ahead of time, is for each CD, what is the information I want to keep in my database. And I've decided for each CD, what I want to keep track of is the CD name, the artist of the CD, the number of tracks on the CD, the cost, and the date purchased. So I'm going to add fields to track all that. And you see here it starts out and says click to add. So my first field I said is going to be the CD name. So I click there, and you see you get several options here for different types of fields. So these are not the field names, but these are different types of data you can track. So some of it's numbers, some of it's money, some of it's text fields, and you see you have different types of text fields in here. What we're going to do to track the CD name, which is text field, is I'm going to track it as short text. And the reason I just use short text is that the short text field itself can track up to 255 characters for each record. So in other words, if I ever thought my CD name was more than 255 characters, I would want a bigger field, but CD names, of course, are much smaller. So short text will typically work very well for most text fields. So what I'm going to do is click that. It's added the field, and it says field 1, but I'm going to rename it to something that has more meaning for me in the database. So again, it's the CD name. What I could do is just put in the word name and click enter, and that's going to name the field. So I'm going to click enter here, and you'll notice right away this is something to be aware of. It gives a warning message. It says the name you supplied is a reserved word. Reserved words have a specific meaning to Microsoft Access. So you want to avoid doing that. You don't want to give a field a name that is a reserved word. So I want to give something a little bit more specific. I'm going to click cancel here, and instead of name, I'm going to call it CD name, and then hit enter, and you'll notice that that first field is CD name, and that's the first one. I'm going to move on to the second one. Again, click to add. And my second field, I decided is going to be the artist on the CD. So I'm going to click there. Again, that's a text field and would never be more than 255 characters long. So short text is just fine. And I'm going to rename the field to be called artist. Hit enter. And now I have another field to add, and that field is going to be the number of tracks on the CD. So that's a number field, and the number here, the second one, is just fine for that. And it added that. I'm going to rename it to tracks. Hit enter. You will notice it actually put in a default value of 0. Since it's a number field, it wants to track something, so the default is 0. The next field I'm going to add is going to be the cost of the CD. So I click here, and cost is a currency field, monetary field. So I'm going to click currency and put in cost. And you'll see that, again, it did a default value of $0. And my final field is going to be date purchased. So I click to add, and you'll notice there is a date and time field. And before I click that, I want you to notice there are actually lots of other types of fields in here. We're not going to talk about the others in this lesson, but it does give you lots of options with other fields in here. I'm going to click currency. I'm sorry, I'm going to click date and time. And this is the date purchased. I'm going to put in date, hit enter. And again, you'll notice I get that warning message in Access about it being a reserved word. I'm going to click cancel. I don't want to do that. And I'm going to rename it to date purchased. Hit enter, and those are the 5, actually 6 fields in our table. The 5 that we determined, and then the ID field, which is something that Microsoft does by default and we'll discuss later. So now I've got my basic table. Let me save it. I have no data in the table, but I've defined the table at this point. So what I'm going to do up here is click this icon, which is the save icon, or you could do file save, but I'm going to go back and just click the icon, and you'll notice it says table name. It wants to give it a name, and default is table 1, but I want to give it something that's more meaningful, so I'm going to say CD space table. Click OK. Now I've saved the table, and I want to just, as an example, show you adding data to the table. So I have an album at home here. It's actually a Beatles album, the Rubber Soul album by Beatles, and I'm going to put it in just to show you an example of adding data to the table. So the CD name is Rubber Soul. I click enter or tab. I put in the artist, which is the Beatles. The tracks, I have 14 tracks on here. The cost was $4. I think I got a deal at a garage sale. And the date purchased, I'm going to put June 1st of this year. I can actually put in 6/1. Hit enter. And by default, it put it as July 1st, 2014. So that's everything about creating a very basic table. I could then go in and add more of the CDs from my collection right here, and it would keep adding rows to the table. As you read in the text, the rows are each Each line of data that contains information about a specific CD in this case, those are the rows, and across the top are the fields. So we have 6 fields defined here. The number of rows depends on how many CDs I want to put into the system. So that's your information and lesson on how to build a table in Microsoft Access.